Welcome to episode 9 in series 1 on the journey to conscious healthcare, where we explore what it takes to consciously create longevity, happiness and fulfillment in your life and that of others. The journey to conscious healthcare looks at the healthcare industry, disability sector and how to best navigate these areas to get the best for you and your life. This series is called The Do's and Don'ts of Support Coordination, where we get to take a look inside what it's like to be an NDIS support coordinator and help them navigate this ever-changing NDIS system. I'm your host, Trevor Keen, and I'm also the founder and CEO of Conscious Healthcare SA, an expert company that is known for high-quality healthcare services and for changing the healthcare industry in the disability space. Today's show is sponsored by Conscious Healthcare SA. At Conscious Healthcare SA, we provide high-quality NDIS healthcare services in the comfort of your own home. If you're interested in an easy and reliable way to navigate the NDIS and access healthcare services, please get in touch. Today's episode is a bit of a shake-up from what is our normal routine. We're now introducing roundtable discussions that unpack challenges that are occurring within the support coordination space. Today with us, we've got Erica from Cause I Care, and we've also got Kellie MacGillivray from Heals Coordination. I might quickly throw it over to you, Kellie, to start and just give a bit of an introduction and say a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Trevor. Hi, my name's Kellie MacGillivray. As you can hear from my accent, I'm originally from South Africa, where I worked for 22 years as a registered nurse. I requalified in Australia as a developmental educator and worked in that field for many years. And I've also done a master's in social work. So I combine all three into what I do. And I've been running Heals Coordination now coming up for 2 years as a sole trader and specializing just in support coordination. And by default, I seem to have fallen into the psychosocial space, with most of my referrals being complex psychosocial clients across the lifespan.
Oh, thanks, Kellie. I really appreciate your introduction there, and I'm sure there's plenty more that we're going to unpack shortly. I might throw it across to you, Erica, if you'd like to say a couple of words about yourself.
Hi, I'm Erica. I'm thankful to be here, and I guess I've been working in support coordination for nearly 4 years, and I've gone out and become a sole trader and have found that journey quite interesting. And I started as a disability support worker, and from there to a house manager, from house managing to connecting my participants with services, and then on to support coordination. So, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, what we might start the discussion with today, I reckon, is just about what it's like running your own business as a support coordinator. Obviously, it's going to be weird and wonderful for everyone. I suppose particularly not just like what it's like running your own business, but what led you down that path, because I'm sure you probably had employment opportunities or other things. But yeah, what is it like running your own business? Who would like to jump in?
The reason I decided to do support coordination as an independent and a sole trader was to mitigate that conflict of interest, because oftentimes I've seen larger agencies who cover everything, and I don't necessarily believe that there was as much choice and control for clients. So that was the reason I wanted to be totally independent. Yep. Yeah,
absolutely. And I suppose we caught up quite a while ago. I remember having a coffee. It was in Stirling with you, Eric and Kellie. We were having a lovely chat. We're talking all things cricket and others. But it was really interesting as well, because your roots and backgrounds, you've been in the university setup as well.
Yeah, I've maintained a connection over 11 years at Flinders University. It used to be the Bachelor of Applied Science in Disability Studies, and then it's moved on to the Developmental Education degree. And I've taught casually at Flinders for 11 years. And then, and I love that. Absolutely love that. So hence the reason I only work 3 days a week, because I used to work at Flinders on a Monday and a Friday. So, yeah.
Oh, perfect. And as we go across to you there, Erica, I'm really intrigued. So I have known you personally for a while, so I'm intrigued though. So what's got you going out by yourself, working as a support coordinator, and what's led your journey to where you are today?
Very similar, actually. I've worked for some bigger companies, and I've watched the space and the way that it works, and I feel like there's not enough separation between support coordination and the other businesses within the NDIS. So I really wanted to be able to look at referring people to as many services that are available without being in a conflict of interest situation. And I think that occurs a bit too much in this industry at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose you raise some pretty good points as far as I would dare say that the regulation currently in the NDIS, given that they've got a lack of workforce, I wouldn't say there's none, but it's pretty minimal, I would sort of say, in my personal experience, although we've just recently gone through an audit and all that sort of stuff. So if you're registered, there's plenty of compliance that you've got to go through. I wonder if we sort of open up the conversation as far as there's the proposal about really making sure that support coordination is actually independent. I don't know if you've been following that along on the channels at the moment. Is anyone up to date on any of the latest there? I think 6 months' time, there's a bit of a horizon on it.
The problem with that is big business who maybe they do core supports and cleaning and gardening, and it just seems like they start to become an umbrella and do everything under the umbrella. And by trying to, when they talk about, we're going to have this clear separation, what I hear a lot of the big businesses say is, well, we're just going to start a new business name and that will be the support coordination part of the business, which is separate from the other part of the business, but they're not, because they're still run by the same people.
Still owners, same people still getting the pocket money from it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is a bit of a challenge. I mean, I have there's other companies around. I won't drop any names in here because I'm not going to land myself in it, but it's an interesting space as to how we can create independence. I've been doing quite a lot of rural work recently. There's a gentleman called Grant McEnglish, and he sort of works out we're sort of talking Whyalla region, and he's very big on, he's actually came from the background of being in the NDIS, sort of came from the roots in the UK actually. So that's where the model sort of ended up evolving from and then coming over here. And he's a big believer as well of that independence. I think a lot of people like the concept and idea of it. I think the reality on the ground of it is probably that there's not a huge level of independence depending upon what other services the businesses do have. I reckon it's probably fair for us to move forward though. So we've gone through as far as the challenges and what got you here today as a support coordinator working for yourself. But what are the challenges of being a sole trader in the ever-changing landscape of the NDIS? Kelly, do you want to jump in?
Time management. Time management is critical. Boundaries, managing boundaries, making sure, just to give you an example, I say my work days are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 9 until 5, and managing those boundaries. I'm getting better at it, but, if you have a crisis, I'm not the person that's going to leave someone hanging. So, but managing boundaries is really important. What is managing expectations too? Yeah. I think that's critical because a lot of the older participants that I work with have come from a disability SA or a block funding service model of service delivery, and there's an expectation that you're going to come in as a case manager and do for. And it's developing that rapport and having that the confidence to explain to them, no, I'm not here to do it for you. I'm here to help you gain independence. So I find that really challenging. It's getting better, but managing boundaries and expectations and time management.
Yeah, right. Really got that clear. We might hear from Erica, and then I reckon maybe what we might do after we cover that is actually just sort of bounce back and forward as far as how each other handles that, because I think that'd be really useful. So, Erica, what about yourself? What challenges do you face? Or have you got the golden sort of wand and got everything handled?
Oh, no magic wand here. Very similar. Being able to keep that time management happening and keeping those boundaries, but also I think for myself, it's the worst thing I find that I'm really bad at is billing. Great at doing work, but I'm not great at rewarding myself for it.
So when you say billing, can you tell me more about that? Is it like you wouldn't bill for a call which is of a certain duration, or actually making sure that you're getting on top of the admin to make sure you process it and then you get paid in a timely fashion? What sort of part of it?
Getting on top of that admin. It's getting on top of it, and actually it's all well and good to do my case notes and keep up with all of that. That's not a problem. But when it comes to making sure that I've counted every phone call or counted every, thing that I've done for somebody, that can become a bit more challenging, because it's I'm not sure why. It's a bit different on your own, I think, because you don't have that admin support, so you are everything.
That's quite a fascinating one. That's sounding like that's resonating with you as well there, Kelly.
Yeah, my husband said to me, he said, "You're doing wonderful work, but you've got to send out invoices." About that. So what I do now is, because theoretically my work week ends on a Thursday. So Thursday, 4:30, I sit down and I process my invoices and send them out, because otherwise it just gets, I've got a spreadsheet where I track every week what I've done for each client. So I keep that there, but it's actually doing, and I don't enjoy admin. Like invoices, it's not my thing. So, but I've had some discipline to do it. Yeah. Otherwise I don't get paid.
Couple comments just to make out of that. 1, 4:30. Geez, you've still got your brain's not fried by then. You're doing really well to get it done at 4:30 on a Thursday. I reckon you do great to get that done. Secondly, where's this? There's got to be an admin business that comes in and does this for support coordinators, surely. I mean, I'm sure that someone could end up coming and filling that market and making life easy for many other sole trader support coordinators, because there's plenty around nowadays. But that's quite interesting. So, let's jump back into the theme. So the theme I really had come out of there was boundaries, was the one that was both shared. How do you sort of set boundaries? And obviously, I think that all ties in with expectation management and also time management. So how do you go about setting boundaries? What are the challenges and, maybe the struggles and also the triumphs? Because I'm assuming you've had some wins and you've also had some losses, right? Erica, do you want to go?
Sure. So I guess I try to start as I mean to finish, so I don't try to overcompensate or do more than what I would normally do before at the beginning of that relationship, so that the person or the participant knows what they can expect from me the whole way through. I think if you go in promising rainbows and sunshine and forget that there's going to be times where you're not going to be able to provide what they want because the NDIS may just say no. That can create a really grey area for your participants. So having that ability to say, we're going to do our best to do this and keep those expectations and boundaries, realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And going to yourself there, Kelly?
I think that's a great point that Eric has made. I think when I first meet with a participant, because it's all about that, developing that rapport, and I'm very open about that. When I first meet someone, if we decide to continue and they engage with me as a support coordinator, then I offer the first half hour free. So we just, to maximize the number of hours that they've got, and then I just give them. Before we start working, I sort of say they've got 12 hours for the year. I sit down with them and say, well, this is what 12 hours looks like. We've got the initial, then we've got the rest of the year, and then we've got reporting at the end. How do you want this to be structured? So it's all about, I'm very much about, everyone's so different. Some people are like, no, I don't want you checking in on me every month. I will call you when I need something. And there are others that have a lot more hours, and it's a totally different relationship. So each client, but I set up those I try to set up those boundaries right at the beginning. Because the plans that are coming back are being significantly cut with regards to support coordination. And I'm really mindful of the fact that this is not, I should be quite happy to have a client for a year and then not get them back again, because I will have done my job and set them up and built their capacity. So managing my own expectations around, if you've got a client with 12 hours for the year, they're probably not going to get support coordination in the next plan, and explain that to them, because a lot of clients are devastated when they don't get support coordination in their subsequent plans. So and another example I have was initially when I started, I used my personal phone for contact, and I found that there's a lot of numbers come through with no ID, no caller ID. So is this a new client? Who is this? Managing all those sort of things. So I did move over to a separate work phone. And I switched that off. I switched that off at Thursday when I'm finished, and I switched it back on again when I come back to work. And any messages there, I leave my voicemail that says, I will pick up a message on Tuesday, or they could email. So I do try and do that.
Yeah, I can hear you've set really, you've put a really good line in the sand there as far as your expectation. What I haven't heard before, I've heard many things. I've had a few podcasts now, but 12 hours and what it looks like, actually giving people the choice and control of what that does look like. It's not actually that common that I reckon that would have be explained to participants, I reckon, because every company is different, and I'm not going to dob anyone in here, but like as in some literally have it that you just call everyone every week or whatever else it might be. They've got all different sort of processes. And I really love how you said, hey, this is what 12 hours looks like. And then you really get that buy-in. So I'm hearing a very much a DE, a social work lens there as far as how you're consulting, and it's very intrinsic from the person getting that input. So I think you've done really well with that. Do you often find when you do that, Kelly, that they might say, oh, wow, 12 hours doesn't tend to go as far as what they think? And does that then help reprioritize? Because a lot of issues, we talk about expectation management, right? But if they know what you can get for 12 hours, if it's not a Ferrari, maybe it's a little Hyundai XL or something like that. Let's get real about that then. So I'm just curious as to your thoughts as to if you think that helps you down the road because of how you actually pitch that at the start or frame it.
Oh, so important to help clients. You sort of make sense of their plan, develop an understanding of their plan, find suitable providers, and then help them prioritize their funding, because a lot of people are not satisfied with what they've got, if it's a second plan, if it's been cut or something. So work with them around prioritizing where their funding goes. Offer choices. I think one of the biggest things is being flexible and creative, because sometimes there's very little money in there, and it's about knowing your community, the area that you work in, and being able to connect them with other providers that are not necessarily NDIS funded. So that's why I've specialized working in the Adelaide Hills, because I've sort of deliberately gone out and got to know the area that I work in, which shouldn't be seen as regional, but it's remarkable how just being up the freeway, in Mount Barker, puts a roadblock up for so many clients around services, service provision, and finding suitable support workers for clients. That is the biggest challenge at the moment. Huge challenge.
Well, just while we're going there, I think I might open it up to you, Erica. Erica, I appreciate that if they had frequent driver miles, you'd be pretty well qualified. You get quite a few kilometres up the road. Do you want to say a little bit more about the areas that you can end up servicing? Because I think you go quite rural. You certainly have done in the past.
I have, yeah. So I've been out to Port Pirie, and I've also got participants in Edwardstown. So it's quite a big distance between the two, but I'll go where it becomes, if I know somebody that has capacity that can take that person on and do the job better, then I'll pass them over, which I have. I've had a few really southern participants come to me, and I've been able to pass them over to other people who are closer to them. But if they're able to understand the plan quite well and just want to do Zoom meetings or, just catch up very infrequently, then I'll continue to service that person. But I only ever charge a half-hour travel, and the reason I've done that is because I don't want to use all of their support coordination funding on me being able to get to them. It's about what we can actually achieve in the time that they've got. And a very similar to Kelly, budget out the participants plan with them when I first meet them. So whatever hours they have, we do discuss, the beginning of your plan. It's going to take a bulk amount to start setting up services and to get you the things that you want to put in place. And then usually in the middle of the plan, we sort of do a stock take and where are we, what's happening. And at the end of the plan for reports and report gathering and having the review, we need a bulk amount of hours there. And in between times, that can look totally different for each participant, the same as Kelly said. It can be very sparse in between. They might not need much help and they might be confident in what they're doing. Or it could be that they're calling me every day because they've got an issue that's popped up, or they're not happy with the service, or I'm lost and I'm not sure what to do next.
Yeah, well, this is quite fascinating because I'm hearing common themes, even though slightly different areas and all that sort of stuff. I mean, Kelly, your workload when you started, were you travelling far and wide? Were you Murray Bridge and then, down south and then up north to Gawler, or what sort of that look like for you? And then how did you end up bringing that back? Because obviously you're now in, more that hill sort of region. So how did you have that initially?
Initially, I connected with an ex-colleague of mine from Disability SA in Murray Bridge, and she was wanting to move on and work more as an allied health professional, as a social worker. So I started working with some of her clients, and so the bulk of my clientele was Murray Bridge. Started, and I used to maximize, because I only ever charged what we're allowed to charge, the $30 for travel, but I make like 6 appointments in one day when I would go up there. So, divide that up between the clients. And again, it's as clients' plans have rolled over, some of them are not getting support coordination and some of them are getting more stated supports around psychosocial recovery coaching. And that's not a space that I have gone into. I'm just sticking with support coordination. But once you get to know, and I've developed those relationships with the LACs in Mount Barker and Murray Bridge, and now I get phone calls from them referring clients. And I'd say it's a mix between Murray Bridge, Mount Barker, and the hills around here. So I've got a few town. I have a few clients in town, so it's crept a little bit down the freeway, but I try to keep it in one area. Yeah. Yeah,
no, that makes sense. So I'm quite curious as well, because we talk about conflict of interest and all that earlier, but as in one challenging thing I found, obviously I'm in an allied health space, is particularly contacting and networking with LACs and all that sort of stuff as well, because obviously we've sort of got this barrier that's sort of in place, as in it's got to be, I can't refer out as an LAC and all that. But then as you get more rural, the services are not as, not as many options and all that sort of stuff. So how do you sort of navigate that sort of pathway of talking? Because it's more a conversation you want to have. You don't want to pitch to an LAC as such. You just want them to be aware, but you send it through. My experience has been that you sort of communicate, and when you communicate with them via email or whatever, you don't really ever know if you end up getting put on that list. And then even then, if you get a list that you just hand out to a participant, I don't know about you, but I don't want to have to call 20 people. So I'm curious as to how you've sort of built those relationships and how that's looked. I don't know if it's both ways as well, Erica.
Yeah, I think initially it's connecting with the community engagement officers at the Mission Australia office, just around what I was doing, and then word of mouth. So I never get a recommendation from a client, but a participant would call and say, your name was on this list and I see that you're a sole trader, because for a lot of people, that's what they want, is they want an independent person. So I guess maybe that's where I get them from. Yeah.
Oh, it's really cool. It's good to know as well, because I think we all, if we can, try and support local people. Erica, did you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I guess I know I pretty much ask everybody where they hear about me from if they do come to me. And a lot of the time it's not from LACs, although I've had a few recently from LACs. I don't really go out and sort of talk to the LAC and say, hey, I'm here, send me some people. It's more word of mouth, and it tends to be very much participants who actually have friends who are participants, and they will refer their friends and say, oh, you should have my support coordinator. And that's where it seems to happen the most. And also services that I've connected into previously that have gone, oh, you know, if you need a good support coordinator, and they'll give a list of support coordinators and my name will be on that. But usually it is from the participants themselves talking to their friends.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I think it's probably about time to jump through. Kelly, your background, very colourful. We mentioned about multiple different degrees. I mean, your walls are falling down with how many degrees you got going on. Do you want to tell us about how your nursing, your developmental education and social work degrees, how has that shaped how you operate then as a support coordinator?
I think it all comes out for me is I'm just passionate about working and supporting people with disability, and I'm also passionate about inclusion. I think I like the way that the DE approach. I looked at what some of the core values were. I think that the practices and values of a DE, you know, means you sort of adopt a holistic approach. And I can use different lenses when working with a client. You know, if I'm working with a client in crisis in a mental health perspective, I'm very familiar with the other services, the government services out there for mental health services. So I'm able to refer on. I think I like to work in collaboration with health professionals. But the most important thing is that partnership with that participant and their family and their carers. So for me, it's come out of I love to help, but I mean, it's working with people to achieve their goals. So I guess maybe that's where I don't know if I put it very well, but anyway, that's.
No, I think it's quite fascinating. I think clearly you've got a motivation and you're passionate about what you're doing, this sense of teamwork. And I think really what I'm hearing behind that is actually the sense of good quality care and unity, because I think you probably find that in the disability sector that, you know, participants and people can feel isolated and alone and very, not cared for. I don't know if I haven't said that very well, but effectively, I think love and attention in this space is very important as far as creating opportunities for people, you know, like as in we talk about the NDIS being about hopes and aspirations, you know, whatever a normal life is. And we've got to actually have the right people around and be informed to be able to do that. And it sounds like you're really eager to play your part in that role and journey.
Yeah, I think it's just to really build someone's capacity, you know, to live a full life in the community, whatever their disability, and just to maximize. For some people, they don't want very much, but for others, they are desperate to be more included in the community. And it's listening to what they want and see if we can achieve it through their NDIS plan and being creative, because NDIS plans are not a big bucket of money, you know, an endless bucket of money. So it's being creative around, okay, we can't fund this through here, but can we look somewhere else to find, you know, supports for you? So I think I find myself trying to be as creative as possible. Yeah.
No, absolutely cool. And I suppose, Erica, so support work background, you know what the lived experience is there, because obviously it's been pretty challenging work as a support worker. Then you're also saying about as a team leader, sort of like working with housing. I'm curious as to how your background has influenced how you operate as a support coordinator.
I think as a house manager, when I was a house manager, it definitely opened my eyes as to what services are out there that aren't being used by people traditionally that could be used, and also how other ways of accessing funding for people. So remembering that there's grants out there that you can, you know, help your participant to look at and say, well, is that something that could possibly help get something that they can't get through the NDIS or access through their NDIS? So I think being a house manager has helped in that way, but I think probably more so in my background, it's the fact that I actually have my own disability that's actually helping me more than anything, and that is that it does make me very aware of how it feels to gradually lose capacity to do certain things, and having that understanding can really help build that rapport with somebody, but also know what they need to be looking at to be able to achieve something. Just the littlest things, like having a conversation with a participant the other day, and recognising that just filling the car up with petrol can be the hardest task for somebody who cannot physically walk that distance. And yet they're still, they can drive, but can they actually get in there to pay for the petrol or fill the car up? And those sorts of things don't get thought about as much when it's taken for granted, when you can do it so easily. So for myself, being that I struggle with those things, I think that helps me to be able to build that rapport and look for services that might be able to help. Also with the DE, I wanted to say with Kelly, very much so I look at whether it's an OT that's needed or a DE that's needed, because they're not the same thing, and often they're confused as being one and the same. And I love to recommend DEs to people for the fact that they can actually do things in more of an educational framework, whereas an OT can go in and help you with your equipment and what's going to work. I find DEs really are great at helping people with time management, or how do I remember to take my medication, or those sorts of little things that, you might come up with 10 different ideas as yourself, but a DE might be able to come up with a whole heap of solutions. So I find that relationship really valuable as well.
Well, it's a great topic. It's one of our further questions to go through. Couple things whilst we're on hot topics. One, we've got Catherine Anir, the DEAI, so the Developmental Education, effectively the peak body. We'll be interviewing her in the podcast soon, which will be pretty exciting. So that'll be a great educational experience for many support coordinators. Secondly, Kelly, I know this is one of your bugbears, DEs, actually people understanding what it is that their role is and how they go about things. I'd love you to sort of speak a bit about it, because I feel like you're as qualified as anyone going around to do it.
Whenever I meet someone and they see my background, they, oh, you're a DE. Can you do PBS plans? That's the first thing that everyone always says. And I just want to get as valuable as they are and how important they are. They have a place, but not all DEs like PBS. You do PBS. You need to be a specialized person to do PBS, and you need to be registered within the NDIS to do that. So that's my biggest. I just think being a DE makes you look at things holistically as well, and through the training is I like what you said, Erica, about using an educational perspective as well. It's about developing strategies that are a little bit left field, but come from an evidence base, that enable the application of effective strategies to support people to develop individual learning goals. And you're working across the spectrum. You can be working with people with an ABI. You can be working with people with a physical disability, neurological disability, ASD, intellectual, a whole heap of disabilities. And, when we talk about functional capacity assessments, and the OTs are the gold standard for functional capacity assessment, DEs are very capable of doing and are qualified. A lot of DEs are qualified to do Vineland assessments, a whole lot of different assessments, which may be more appropriate for settings. So I think my thing is a DE is so much more than a PBS practitioner, but you just work holistically across the lifespan. Get functional independence for people and social inclusion, which is so, so important, because there's so many socially isolated people in the community that, I keep finding. But I really think that as a mixture of my DE background and social work has really given me a really effective lens to look at, working with different clients. And it certainly does inform my approach. And I think people have said to me, you've got a very practical approach to putting things into plan. And I think that comes from being a DE as well.
Mm. Yeah, well, I think you put that very well. I'll probably say something slightly offensive now, not intentionally, but when they talk about a DE, that sometimes the term that gets thrown out is a practical psychologist. So not so offensive to DEs, more offensive to psychologists. Not trying to be, but like as in on the ground running and noticing the behaviours and noticing the environment and the triggers and whatever else might be involved, and actually stepping back and then going, okay, what's really at play? I don't know if that sounds like a fair term or not.
Yeah, I think it's very appropriate, because there's a lot of crossover in so many different degrees. When you look at the DE degree and you look at the graduates coming out, that's why I loved when I was working at Flinders, as a tutor. They're encompassed so many. There's elements of psychology. There's elements of nursing when you learn about the brain and how the brain impacts, an ABI. There's the social aspect. That it's a very rounded degree. And I'm delighted that DEs are so highly regarded now. It didn't used to be like that when it first started.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm really interested. I'm going to have a chat with Aaron Byrne from the NDIS, obviously NDIA on behalf of the NDIS shortly. And he's one of the big wigs that's up there. And I'm intrigued to hear his perspective on it, because I know there's quite a lot of OTs in the background behind the NDIS. And that's kind of the reason that a lot of these gold standards are OT stuff, rather than, what about using the capacity of DEs and social workers? And what if we could get people services like now or yesterday, rather than sitting on wait lists for 6, 9, 12 months? I mean, I think we really, that's a more patient or participant-centered approach in my view. But I'll probably go to my grave with that. We'll see how we go. As we continue.
Sorry, I just want to highlight as well that DEs can work in so many different environments. You can work in behavior support and intervention, therapeutic support and intervention, early childhood. A lot of e-graduates are in early childhood, where disability education support, support coordination is one of them. Employment, there's a lot of DEs working in employment, counselling, accommodation, planning and management. There's so many different, when I think of all the placements that students go on when they're doing the DE degree, it's across all sorts of different, from education to health to the NDIS. So it's a wonderful degree. Yeah.
No, I think it's been very insightful for many to learn from that. We've touched on this a little bit earlier, but work-life balance. So you're owning your own business. Work-life balance, does it exist? Is this just an elusive term, or tell us more? Come on, Erica, jump in, please.
Does it exist in support coordination at all? It can be quite tricky. But I think being a sole provider, I actually believe that I have more of a work-life balance now than I did previously. So some of the reasons for that is that I can set my own caseload. So I can look at it and say, this is what I can manage and give the best that I can give, rather than being given a KPI. Yes. I can also make the decision that, on a Wednesday at 1:00, something's happening with my family and I need to attend to that. And so what I might have been doing at that point in time, which was maybe writing a report or whatever, I can do that at 9:00 at night, and that's okay. So I'm able to sort of give myself the time that I need and the balance that I need that I wasn't able to get previously. But that's the positive. That's the really good side of things. The bad one is where people just don't, even though you can set wonderful boundaries, people still think that weekends are, I can ring you. Can I ring you? I can ring you, can I? And although I don't turn my phone off, and that the reasoning for that is that I do have some participants that do need support more regularly, And so I will look at who's calling and just sort of, close my phone over if I think it's not important, and that it can wait till Monday. But there are boundaries that you still need to put in place and be able to do that. So, yeah, I think the good outweighs the bad, though, very definitely. I'm able to set less of a expectation of having so many people that you're just putting out spot fires. It's just not good when you work like that. And being able to actually give my all to my participants, that's a real bonus.
Absolutely.
Totally agree with what you said, Erica, and that being independent, we have choice and control about how we schedule and how many clients we have so that we can give what I regard as a good service. So that I totally agree with you. The challenge for me is when there's a crisis. And that is,
Can we clarify, when you say there's a crisis, do you mean a crisis is in with participants and there's only one of you? Or do you mean, okay, I didn't know if you meant like what if something personally happens to you as well? So I just want to clarify for the audience.
No, so if your client gets arrested and lands up in jail and and that doesn't happen in 9 to 5. If your client has a mental health crisis and lands up at the emergency room and the only number that they can remember is yours. And the frustration around when clients are in that emergency situation and they are in the hospital system and the health system, and that interface between the NDIS, what the NDIS does and what health does, that is a very complex space to begin.
Oh.
I can see you smiling, Erica.
Both of us.
Yeah. And that is a very, for me, I because of, I guess, of who I am, there's often...
We asked the question, Kelly, who pays for the FCA? Hospital... Oh, sorry, it's a bit of a funny, but I'll let you go on.
Let's not go down that pathway, Trevor. Yeah, it is, and often there's just not enough money in the plan to provide, that crisis support and fulfill their care role. But nobody wants to say no to a person, and I find that's what I try to do. I'm not going to say that I'm always successful in this, but what I try to do in a crisis is take a proactive role. And with complex case clients, I'm really very strong about setting up an emergency contact list. Should this happen, this is who you contact, and help them to set those systems up. Do they always work? No. But again, I think it just highlights what a diverse role support coordination is. But I mean, I came into this because I really want to make a genuine difference in the lives of people with disabilities. So it can
Absolutely.
be
We've got a couple of things to offer there. One, in regards to that support plan, we identified that as well. We've made a template. So I'll put the link to getting that template out for people so that, you can have a list of, whether it's physio and OT and emergency contact and all that. So I'm sure many support coordinators will benefit by getting access to that. But you raised many points in it. It's a very challenging role. I'm curious because Aaron Byrne, when we speak to him, they've actually got guidelines from what does the role of a support coordinator look like? This black and white, sort of almost like the bucket. We're actually having this sphere, this magical sphere. So it's coming out. So I'm very interested to have a chat with him and see whether they're actually going to publish something, because I think it would make life a bit easier for you to have something in front of yourself as a support coordinator possibly, so that you can say, this is what I do and this is what I don't do. Do you sort of agree with that? Would that help you guys out as a support coordinator?
Well,
or not?
Erica, you go.
Look, I think that there definitely is a need for the role to be more resilient and written as this is how the role is seen. But I think the way that the role is seen is not actually how it plays out. And I don't think no matter how much you sit back and say, well, you know, I'm not an advocate, or I'm not a social worker, or I'm not a mental health worker, or I'm not a miracle worker, we'll end up having all of those pots there, and people want and need that help. And so it becomes a support coordinator's role is not as black and white as the NDIS likes to think it is. And as much as you want to try and distance yourself and say that you can do that, I don't think that you can if you're providing the service that's needed by those people who are disabled and are asking for that help. There isn't capacity building funding in their plan for other people to step in and do those things. And then you've also got the government saying, well, you know, you've got NDIS saying that's medical, that's mental health, that's aged care, that's, you know, all these other windows, all these other blocks of funding. But when you go to those blocks of funding, they all go, but that person is disabled. So it all falls back on the NDIS. And the NDIS will say no, and they'll say no. And then the participant is left in the middle, not knowing what to do. And the person they run to is their support coordinator. So our role isn't black and white.
It's not very clear cut, is it? Well, I think whilst we're sort of talking about that, maybe some slight challenges we are facing, recovery coaching, taking the way of support coordination, dollars, cents, is it? Is that where we're going? Or I'd love to open it up. Kelly, I think I've got a nod from you. Let's see what you've got to say.
6 of my participants' recent plans have come back with, under the heading support coordination, recovery coach. 5 of those 6 came back with stated support. Therefore, it has to be psychosocial recovery coach. I don't understand. It's paid at a lower rate, but they're more hours. So I don't see the cost saving. I don't. Maybe my maths doesn't work, but I don't get it. But I had a conversation with a planner recently who said, but you know that they are getting rid of, in the psychosocial space I'm talking, they are getting rid of support coordination in favor of recovery coaching. So a client that's had support coordination in one plan will come back, if they get any, they will come back with recovery coach. So
well, should we unpack that a bit more as far as like, I mean, if we want to go back to its essence, right? So if we want to do a little bit of a rope back in history of social work was pretty much what a support coordinator is, right? So a support coordinator, if you look in the hospital setup, that's exactly what their role is. Very complex, you know, how do you know to navigate systems and, you know, be very adaptable, versatile, flexible? That's sort of the history of it. And then you step forward and you get your level 3 if you come into the NDIS as far as support coordination. And then you've got all that stuff get pushed down to level 2. And then it sounds like, I might be wrong, but it sounds like we're now going down a level again. Now, I say that with all due respect, but now trying to push that down to a lesser item. And it's just like, well, where's the respect for people's ability to get work done? Now, what I mean by that is you say you can't see the savings. Well, I tend to agree with you because I think someone who's got the social work experience or whatever it might be, you don't have to be a social worker to be a support coordinator. But what I'm saying is someone who's got that knowledge, experience and all that sort of stuff, fundamentally, can they not make more happen with less time because they can link things together? Or like, I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are both across that at all. I'll throw it back to you, Kelly.
A recent conversation with an NDIA representative, delegate planner, said, but a recovery coach is both a support coordinator and a recovery coach. They can do both roles.
Oh, can we get a snap of that and we'll put that in the headline for the week?
Oh, you know, I have a very clear idea around what my role is as a support coordinator. I didn't go into this to become a recovery coach. I didn't go into this to work therapeutically on a more regular basis with a client. And it's a fabulous thing, but I don't understand the rationale around the move from support coordination to going to the recovery coach. I'm still very unsure about where that's going. I know it's it's a recovery orientated approach. And I mean, there's a lot of evidence, peer-reviewed evidence around that, but I'm confused. And for the participants that you've developed that relationship with, one came back yesterday and his first plan went in for review. No support coordination came back in, went in for review just to get more support coordination hours. And his core was cut in half and he got 200 hours of recovery coaching over 3 years. I find myself at the moment, and I don't want to come across as negative, but I find myself doing a lot of firefighting, supporting clients in review, and their plans come back slashed. And the sort of approach is, well, if it's, when you run out of money, put in for review, or if you're not happy, put in for review. So it's I'm finding it a very complex space to work in at the moment, with plans coming back and the ambiguity around, what the expectation is. So,
is it two roles, not just a firefighter? It's also someone who's going to the casino, right? Because if you got to go through a plan review, it's exactly that. It's red or black. Now, you either win when you go in, and obviously you try and bank yourself up with as many reports and as much evidence as possible. But correct me if I'm wrong, but with all due respect, it is literally like going to the casino. You either win or you don't. Now, if you've got good reports and all that, that can help a lot, but it also depends on the planner you've got there. Now, I even remember, I won't land someone in, I won't say a name, but I remember speaking with someone recently and they said that even the directive, which is coming from the top down to planners and all that sort of stuff, has been, that is how it should happen. Like, you do the right evidence, you should get the right funding. But unfortunately, if you get the planner that's, putting their heels in or doesn't have the latest bits of knowledge, they might push it back. And so you're just sort of fighting against them for no real good reason. There's justification for that funding. Clearly I'm very passionate about this, but this was even coming from a NDIA representative. So I'm very curious as to what they're going to do about it. But Erica, I'm going to stop stealing the air. What do you reckon about all this?
They're wasting time and funding. They're wasting people's time and they're wasting people's funding. I understand what recovery coach means, but you're paying somebody half as much as you're paying them for support coordination for twice as much stress. It is a stressful role to deal with somebody who is on the verge of suicide. It is a stressful role to deal with somebody who every day is depressed and doesn't want to get out of bed and doesn't want to acknowledge that there's a world out there that wants them in it. It is not something that should be taken lightly, and I think that it is being taken lightly by creating a role that is less than. It's to me, it's crazy. I don't understand it. But also, in doing that and the way that the funding's occurring, if you do the plan properly the first time, people aren't going to be going back for reviews, which means there's going to be less support coordination needed because you're not constantly taking people for reviews. You're going to need less of the planner's time. You're going to need less of the LAC's time, and the plan will work. But if you don't do it properly the first time and you go back for reviews and then you go back for another review and then you go to the AAT, you are wasting everybody's time and the participants' funding and their time and their energy and their resources to be able to survive, because they're fighting to get the basic of basics. I have a participant at the present moment who is fighting for transport funding. He had transport funding previously. They've removed the transport funding because they realise that he has a driver's licence. Now, he drives his car at 40 kilometres an hour to the local shop, picks up his groceries and drives home. That's the only place he drives his car. If he's got appointments, he uses other forms of transport, whether it's taxis, the bus, the train. He wants to be independent, but for that, they've reduced his funding. And now we've tried to fight that, and now it's got to the point where we would have to take that to the AAT if we want to fight that further for $3,000 worth of funding. How does that make sense? It doesn't make any sense.
Probably wasted more money trying to just get.
It's a waste.
Yeah.
Well,
I had a
on that
planner.
note, you go, Kelly.
Sorry, just to go and support what Erica was saying, I had a planner with exactly the same scenario of the client as yours with the driving. And the planner said, well, she should just give up her license and then she could get funding. And I'm like, hang on, whoa, lose her independence and things so that she can get transport funding. I was horrified.
Oh, it's not good to hear, is it? We might change the tone a little bit. Not that these are not valid conversations. These are very valid conversations. But what I think is important is that we do flag these up. Hopefully, we do get the time and attention from others that we need in regards to these issues. But like where we will go is there's been people that have helped you both along the way. So I think it might be is it Talia, Erica, someone that sort of helped you out along the way? I sort of might give you a bit of time to just say, how they've sort of helped you along your journey to get to where you are.
Most definitely. So Talia, when I was first training as a support coordinator, she was one of the main people that was teaching me what I was going to be doing, what my job role was. She was a DE who worked for the same company as I did at the time, and highly supportive and just really there for me. So I'm really thankful for her taking that time out to give me that knowledge base. And then also I've worked with many people, but Janet Martin is somebody who I've worked really closely with through the last 3 or 4 years, and I've found that just having that person to bounce off of and being able to give each other connections, if we can't think of, there's new businesses coming out all the time and you can't keep up with everything. You don't know everyone who started a new business or everyone who's out there who can do this, or, your participant will come back and say, oh, this person did a really great job, and you'll be able to pass that connection on to somebody else. So having those connections like Janet and even Amy, there's another support coordinator who I speak with regularly. Christina, there's another support coordinator. So between us, we're able to bounce off each other with ideas on how to cope with something, what services are out there. And it's really important to have that network behind you, I think. So I'm really grateful for those people.
Oh, thank you for that. And throwing it over to you there, Kelly, I think in regards to supervision and some support you might get, I think there was something you were mentioning.
Yeah, I get regular professional supervision from a wonderful person called Liz from Intrinsic Supervision, and I couldn't do what I do without working with her. And she's a DE as well, and she has her own business and she provides professional supervision. Invaluable, absolutely invaluable. And someone else that I'd like to shout out to is Bree Coulter. She's a social worker in Murray Bridge, and when I first started out, she was amazing. We worked together in a previous life as social workers, and she was a wonderful person. Like, oh, have you tried this? And these are some fabulous providers, and just that collaborative buddy. So both those people, huge shout outs to them.
Oh, massive. And I think it's really awesome. I think we've all got people that have helped us along the way, and we do need to say our thanks to them. But whilst we're on that note as well, I think we've got a couple other little things. So good news stories. Getting on to the NDIS, Erica, one of your specialties, I think. Do you want to talk a little bit about a bit of a good news story you've got?
So there's been probably since I've started my own business, I've had a lot of people that I network with who run businesses and companies and help people within the disability sector. They'll often turn around and say to me, oh, look, I've got this person who doesn't have support coordination, but they don't know what to do with their NDIS plan, or they've just got their first plan, or they're trying to get onto the NDIS and they don't know where to step. And I've been able to, thankfully, because I am my own business, I've been able to turn around and say, okay, let me help them out. So there's probably about 10 people that I've been able to get support coordination who didn't have support coordination previously. And the ones that I haven't been able to get support coordination for, I've been able to at least get them an increase in their funding and help them understand their plan within a short period of time, which then lets them go out and do what they need to do. And I think that although it's not something that I've been, getting paid for, it's something that I feel really strongly everybody should have support coordination in their plan to start with. Nobody should be expected to understand the NDIS without, some form of help. And I don't think LACs have the time to do that. So I'm really grateful that I've been able to go out and do that myself. And it's good. It's good to see those people come back and go, yes, I got some help. Can we move on with this now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it opens doors and it certainly gives a bit of hope, I reckon. Kelly, I reckon you've had a couple as well. I think there was two. There was one. What have I got written down here? No will, no care. What's this about, eh?
A delightful gentleman that I support with a complex psychosocial disability, incredibly socially isolated, had a medical event and landed up in an emergency room and refused further treatment. And it was a critical situation. And he said he didn't have a will and he wasn't prepared to undergo further treatment. So with some little bit of creative thinking and some phoning around, I phoned the local lawyers in Mount Barker to see if anyone did any pro bono wills. And a fabulous law firm in Mount Barker said, yeah, the principal will see your client. And my client, with a little bit of preparation to make sure that his language was appropriate, and he felt comfortable coming in. And it made me feel really good, because I think it's probably the first time in a long time that this participant was treated with some respect. And he was treated by he was Mr. So-and-so, and gentleman had a suit on and he was in an office, and we left and he said, I've never had anyone call me sir before. I said, oh, okay. He said, anytime I've ever seen a lawyer was when I was in jail.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was really, really chuffed with his will. It was a simple thing, and it was, and he wanted to, when his next paycheck came through, he wanted to buy the lawyer a box of chocolates and drop them off, which he did. So it was building his capacity. Yeah. So he now can go ahead and have his medical treatment. So that was a good one. Yeah. That was
it's a huge win. Kelly, I'm going to give you two for the price of one here. There's another one that you had in regards to overcoming adversity. I don't know if you remember the story, the good news story you had there. Help some overcoming adversity.
Oh, gosh, there are quite a few. This one, I think the one you're talking about, anyway, the one I can think about is this client. I was never safe to go into the community. You had to meet him in a public space. You would never meet him alone in his own home. And recently I was in Murray Bridge and I saw him at a local coffee shop sitting outside. He was on his own, but he was actually safely interacting in the community. And that probably wouldn't have happened had he not had an NDIS plan that helped him to build that capacity to move confidently and safely into the community. Because, those are the little success stories.
Love it.
Yeah.
I think it's really warming, and I don't think we always get to hear the good news stories because there's so much chaos. Let's be fair. We're support coordinators, aka chaos coordinators, I think sometimes can get thrown out. I don't know if that sounds true or not, but certainly heard that a few times. Now, it's come to that last time. We've got one final question. I don't know if you've heard it before, but it's coming out again. So let's pretend it's 20 years into the future and we've achieved success in the disability sector. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Paint me a picture. Off you go, Kelly.
People with disabilities are seen as normal in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And in the support coordination space is that all new plans still get support coordination. And we can actually do our role as support coordinators and not be fighting fires and taking clients to reviews and not wasting time, but actually using their money appropriately and not having to waste money going to further and further reviews, more and more functional capacity assessments, more and more evidence. We can actually build capacity and bring back choice and control. I think when the NDIS came in, that was the fundamental thing about the NDIS, was providing clients with choice and control. And there are days that I sadly don't think that is the focus anymore. It seems like they're working under KPIs for cost cutting. So I'd love to see the NDIS sufficiently funded to be able to, for the rest of my lifetime and for my family's lifetime, that it continues to be appropriately funded.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for that, Kelly. Erica, do you want me to say the question again, or have you got your own picture in your own head you want to share?
No, I think I've got hold of the question fairly well. I think what I'd like to see it looking like in 20 years' time is that people are people first. That's who they are. They're people, and that their needs are taken into account. I'd really like to be able to say that in 20 years' time, the NDIS would have sat and grown enough that it does look at choice and control as just that, choice and control, and also that it couples hand in hand with duty of care, because I believe that it's so important that we have both of those. It needs to be a weighted scheme where it's even. You know, you've got your choice and control, and you also have duty of care. And I would really like to see that people are funded correctly and that services are billing correctly. And I think that's something that really needs to be looked at, is the care ratio that people are assessed at, and that it is across the board. That is their care ratio, and it's known across the board, and everybody agrees that that's the right ratio, and there's no argument over, you know, are they 1-to-1, are they 1-to-3, are they, you know, let's look at the person's reports, make that decision and move forward. Don't keep having to go back and reassess it every 5 minutes. And so I'd like to see that in 20 years. I'd really like to see it functioning really well.
Yeah, well put. I think you've said that very succinctly. So we've been talking here today to Kellie MacGillivray from Hills Coordination and also Erica Devitt from COSI Care. Ladies, we'll start with Kelly. Where can people go to get some more information about what it is that you do?
I have a Facebook page, my business Facebook page, so Hills Coordination on Facebook, and all my contact details are there. I'm working on it. I don't have a website.
Not to worry at all. That's okay. Erica, and the same to you. Where can people go to get in touch with you?
I have a very small Facebook page. It's not even really fully set up yet. Seriously, you have my name and number. If they need to contact me, that's probably the easiest way. I don't really advertise, so I'm just grateful to be able to help people when I can.
No, it's fantastic. I'll make sure in the show notes that I end up putting links so you can reach out to Kelly and Erica as you want as well. Thank you, ladies, so much for your time. I really appreciate it today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor.